What it is that they're doing is they're treating Shedeur Sanders like a 5th-round pick. Right. We're not covering every 5th-round pick in the NFL hoping that he gets an opportunity to be the starter on day one. We felt like, oh my goodness, they got a diamond in the rough. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. They felt like they evaluated him there, and that's where they picked him. And they're playing the guy that they picked in the 3rd round over him because they evaluate him at a higher level than what they do Shedeur Sanders. And I get it.
The Cleveland Browns are once again creating problems of their own. Their latest misstep centers on Shedeur Sanders. Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky have both noted that Cleveland is repeating the same mistakes. The team spent valuable draft capital and is now undermining that investment. This reflects a persistent issue in the organization's decision-making. It's not just a football decision, it's a pattern of self-inflicted setbacks.
Habits and some of the traits that we saw show up in college were very prevalent this past weekend against the Rams. Holding onto the football, catching the snap and not reading the defense, kind of evaluating what the defensive line is doing, and then trying to see if you can go make a play, and that's the concern. Okay, it's 1st and 10. They want a play-action double move at the bottom of the screen. The route doesn't win, and then the protection breaks down a little bit. You're taught as a young quarterback, protection breaks down, find the closest check down. It's right there, it's 1st and 10. He gets to like the 4th part of the...
The Cleveland Browns have long carried a reputation for instability. Even when it appears they are turning a corner, the organization finds a way to create new problems. Momentum gives way to questionable decisions and progress stalls. The latest situation centers on Shedeur Sanders. It highlights recurring issues in leadership, planning, and execution. Instead of establishing a clear path forward, Cleveland risks undermining its own investment.
There's a lot of players who feel like they should have been picked at a certain spot, should have been viewed in a certain way. But when you get on these teams, it's about developing the team, not doing what's individually best for a certain player. And that's what Kevin Stefanski has to do. And I get it. We want to say all the reasons why what's happening to him isn't right. But maybe we aren't right on the way that not only the entire NFL viewed him, but now the Cleveland Browns view him as well.
Shedeur Sanders was not brought in to be a placeholder or a scapegoat. He is expected to be the long-term solution, a high-upside quarterback with the tools, poise, and Sanders' pedigree to elevate the roster. The focus should be on developing him and positioning him to lead the team forward.
They sabotaged it. They rigged it against him today, putting him in with 3rd and 4th stringers, 5th stringers. You got no shot at quarterback. They threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski. It's a desperate, dangerous situation in which he's got no shot, man. He's throwing to Sal freaking Cannella. What? But he got sacked 5 times because he's hanging on the ball trying to make a play, and nobody can separate. Then it comes down to a couple of minutes are left, and Shedeur tries to go on the field, and Stefanski puts Tyler Huntley in place of him. Excruciating to watch.
Shedeur Sanders brings accuracy at all levels, steady leadership, and the kind of composure that comes from handling pressure. Fans were energized, and the league was paying attention. For once, Cleveland had a credible source of hope at quarterback, then the familiar pattern returned. Instead of committing to a clear development plan, first-team reps, stable direction, and a defined timeline, the Browns introduced uncertainty and slowed his progress. Rather than building around him and giving Shedeur a direct path to lead, they split priorities and sent mixed signals. The result is momentum stalled at the very point it should be accelerating.
I also can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They've made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after session.
This wasn't about scheme or play design. It was a pattern of mismanaging a young quarterback. From the start, the signs were clear. Shedeur Sanders arrived at camp without priority first-team reps or the confidence-building snaps a rookie need. Instead of a defined development plan, he was asked to compete from behind, treated like a depth option rather than a long-term starter. The message was, earn it later rather than build it now. When game action came, he was put on the field with limited preparation. Protection was inconsistent, and the play calling did little to ease his transition, more a stress test than a structured debut. The approach emphasized survival over progression, creating conditions where mistakes were likely and growth was harder to achieve. Analysts Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted the same points. The issues reflected organizational organizational choices, not a shortfall in Sanders' ability. This was not a rookie collapsing under pressure. It was a franchise failing to provide the support, reps, and clarity required for a first-year quarterback to succeed.
Shedeur moves slowly, kind of trying to see what's going on, and then that creates that sack fumble. So a lot of the stuff that we just saw in college is a big deal. This ball gets snapped at the 48-yard line. Defense has won the rep. Play is dead. Throw the ball away.
Yep.
It's first down. But instead we run and it's a 2.5, 3-yard loss. So instead of being 2nd and 10, we're 2nd and 13. We're dead. Again, here's the opportunity to throw the juke route. Hold, scramble. So some of those things that I was and others were concerned about on the college tape showed itself again. This is not the end of the world, though. This is part of his development.
Cleveland managed to take a highly promising rookie and within weeks put him in a position where he looked unprepared. Ryan Clark called out the core issue. A first-year quarterback cannot succeed without protection, clear situations, and a controlled environment. Dan Orlovsky added that when a young quarterback isn't given structure, support, or coherent schemes, you're not evaluating ability, you're manufacturing failure. That's what happened to Shedeur Sanders. Browns fans weren't just disappointed with the results, they were alarmed by the process. This is a fan base familiar with quarterback missteps, yet even they recognize the pattern. A talented prospect subjected to poor planning and inconsistent guidance. After one preseason setback, the conversation shifted toward maybe Shedeur isn't ready instead of examining coaching, play design, and preparation. The reality is clear. The question isn't whether Sanders is ready, it's whether the Browns were prepared to develop and support him.
Well, that would be a nice exit strategy because he would come up as doing Shedeur a favor. Like
one's got to go, right? One's got to go. See, to clear this thing up.
At some point, but I'm sorry, I know they don't care. If they were to trade Shedeur Sanders now after that preseason performance and he would go on to be good.
The organization has cycled through quarterbacks for years, and the pattern is unchanged. Blame the player, protect the system, and repeat the same mistakes. Fans are split. Some argue Shedeur Sanders needs time and support, while others treat one rough outing as proof he isn't the answer. That division hides the real problem, the Browns' process. This isn't Shedeur failing, it's the team failing Shedeur. Across the league, successful teams create clear development paths. Kansas City brought Patrick Mahomes along behind a veteran and tailored the offense before handing him the job. Houston committed to CJ Stroud, built around his strengths, and let him grow with consistent direction. Smart teams invest, protect, and show belief. Cleveland did the opposite with Shedeur. Uneven reps, inconsistent protection, and unclear plans. Then question the outcome. That's not development, it's organizational mismanagement.
These players have played a tremendous amount of football.
Right.
And I remember last year when Bo Nix came out of Oregon, we talked about all the easy throws Oregon creates.
Right.
The level of the skill players that are around him. And then we watched Bo Nix acclimate to the NFL game extremely quickly. I see a lot of those same traits in Dillon Gabriel. He gets the football out of his hands. He takes the throw that's available to him. He plays on time. And part of whether or not you get an opportunity to get on the field is the people that you're competing against. And I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to Shedeur, because I'm not only a fan, it's somebody I want to see succeed.
The Browns will likely present this as part of a deliberate development plan, tough standards, resilience building, and testing a rookie under pressure. In practice, it isn't development, it's a damaging approach that undercuts growth. The organization has not shown a consistent model for nurturing young talent, and Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted that publicly. After Shedeur Sanders stumbled in a preseason game, the reaction was immediate. Headlines, polarized fan takes, and sweeping conclusions about his readiness. The front office offered little acknowledgement of the conditions he was placed in. Clark's point was direct. You do not evaluate a rookie by how he looks in a setup designed for failure. You evaluate him when he's properly supported. Orlovsky explained how poor coaching choices, protection, sequencing, and role clarity can quickly erode confidence and stall development. The issue was not Sanders' ability, it was Cleveland's process, which appeared disorganized and unprofessional for an NFL operation.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna. Then the the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first team guys. Then they throw Dylan Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dylan always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelsey's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelsey's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelsey's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.
So before your final year at Miami, there's a lot of conversations revolved around Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, I'm assuming you guys have a great relationship. Some of the clips you've seen and stuff like that. What is it like for you to have like this rivalry with Shedeur?
I don't have a rivalry with him. That's my boy. So at the end of the day, this whole process, we thought me and him were going to be 1 and 2 the whole time. Whether he's 1, I'm 2, whether I'm 1, he's 2. And so that's just always been, our mindset. It didn't go that way. I thought he was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft as well, even throughout college. A lot of stuff out there on him ain't really, the truth, just because they spin it different ways, like they spin stuff about me different ways. But I mean, when he gets his chance, become a starter, I know he's gonna make the most of it, and I'm ready to get back to work with him. After the season, talk some more stuff to him.
Cam Ward directly challenged the uneven standards applied to Shedeur Sanders, calling them inconsistent and unfair. By insisting that performance, not politics, guide evaluation, he shifted the discussion from one player to a league-wide problem. Sanders' treatment now serves as a test of how the NFL supports and evaluates emerging quarterbacks.
I feel a special relationship with him, especially me. First getting to know him 5 years ago when I started working with him. But it did surprise me because he's a good quarterback. He doesn't get a lot of the credit that he deserves. Especially the plays that he made in Colorado. A lot of quarterbacks in the country are making those plays. And so when he gets this opportunity, I'm pretty sure having soon today that he'll make sure he'll make plays on the field.
Cam Ward's public challenge to the treatment of Shedeur Sanders brought the issue into clear view. For months, discussion around Sanders has centered on his profile, major compensation, a prominent Nike deal, and the expectation to stabilize a struggling franchise. Rather than a standard evaluation of a top prospect, he has faced sustained skepticism from analysts, fans, and league voices. Ward's comments underscored that the standards being applied to Sanders diverge from those used with other rookies. By stating it directly, he did more than support another quarterback. He identified a broader problem in how the league responds to young players with significant visibility. The takeaway is direct. Assessments should reflect on-field performance and development, not external narratives.
A generational talent. I'm gonna prove him right. I'm gonna prove him right. Don't worry. Oh my God. An article came out today. I'm generational. So I guess it's article versus article. I like that you think that, man. But we all know the truth. What? Trav gonna be first? You generational, I'm legendary. That's cool. We can be legendary. Legendary, get their ass. We'll start doing in like 5 minutes.
Shedeur Sanders entered the league with more than a playbook. He brought a public brand, a family legacy, and expectations unusual for a first-year quarterback. Before his first regular season throw, he was already positioned at the center of attention. Rather than assess him on that reality and his on-field ability, many voices reduced him to marketing, treating visibility as proof of hype instead of performance. Cam Ward pushed back on that framing. His point was simple: judge Sanders by the same criteria applied to other rookies. With Sanders' resume, production, leadership, and composure, most first-year quarterbacks would be discussed as long-term cornerstones. The evaluation should be consistent, focused on development and results, not perception.
This is the process with Shedeur, who I know is a buddy of yours, and how do you think both of you guys will end up doing in the league?
I think we'll both end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think the work that me and him are willing to put in, the relationship we have to constantly compete each and every day, to better our craft, for ourselves. I just think it's going to end up paying off for us in the long run.
You guys kid each other about who's going first and how much that matters to you?
Yeah, we play around, we joke around with it. It really don't mean nothing. The draft pick will never mean anything. At the end of the day, you got to show whether you can prove each and every Sunday. You can't just do it 1 year.
Disrespect shows up in two patterns. First, Shedeur Sanders is repeatedly framed through his father, Deion Sanders, as if lineage erases his own work. Discussion drifts to pedigree instead of what the film shows. Second, his visibility is treated with suspicion. His audience reach, partnerships, and ability to lift ratings are labeled hype rather than recognized as value. Instead of acknowledging that he drives demand and expands the stage for his team, critics call it an unfair edge. The result is a skewed evaluation. Star power is held against him while on-field production gets pushed aside. The standard should be consistent. Assess the tape and the development, not the last name or the attention it brings.
Well, Ward were microfact.
Cam Ward's remarks went beyond defending Shedeur Sanders. They confronted how the league manages star power. The reality is simple. The NFL markets visibility, but resists it when a player doesn't follow the expected script. Rookies are supposed to be quiet, deferential, and grateful for limited leverage. Sanders arrived with leverage, brand reach, major endorsements, and confidence. And that presence was recast as entitlement. Instead of treating those factors as earned advantages, much of the commentary used them to diminish him. Ward called out that contradiction. The same influence the league sells to audiences is criticized when a young player exercises it. His point is a standards problem, not a personality dispute. Evaluate Sanders on his preparation, leadership, and results. Don't penalize him for having a platform or for using the leverage that the modern NFL itself helps create.
Now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy.
Cleveland became the center of the conversation. With Shedeur Sanders attached to a major Nike partnership, the expectation was straightforward. He should be given real game reps. The Browns instead leaned on Joe Flacco as the default choice, treating stability as the safer path while sidelining a quarterback with clear cultural and commercial pull. Each week Sanders didn't see the field, scrutiny grew. Commentary questioned the value of his contract environment and relevance, and fan debate shifted from development to doubt. That wasn't measured evaluation. It was a delay framed as prudence that eroded confidence in the process. Cam Ward reset the terms of the debate. He pointed to an uneven standard. When veterans or other young players secure significant endorsements, it's considered smart business. When Sanders does it at scale, it's recast as ego or hype. Even the scope of his off-field agreements became ammunition against him rather than evidence of market demand. Ward's position is simple. Use one standard. Assess Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and progression, not on discomfort with his platform. Treat visibility as an asset, not a disqualifier. The issue isn't attitude or branding, it's the consistency of the evaluation. Ward called it directly. The treatment has been unequal, and it should be corrected by aligning opportunity with performance criteria.
Fans need to recognize there's not a team in the league he'd start for. Not one. That's not ridiculous, that's not unfair, that's not a vast conspiracy.
Shedeur Sanders fans are Angel Reese fans. They're just fair weather fans who don't really give a fuck about the sport. Most of them are just Deion fucking groupies that followed him when he went to fucking Colorado, just like Angel Reese's fans had never watched basketball prior to her playing at LSU, and they followed her to the WNBA and don't know shit about the sport. That's it. Now Dion fucking groupies are running around acting like, oh, this is payback to his dad.
The timing is pivotal. Shedeur Sanders isn't trying to blend into the league's background. He's shaping the agenda. He drives debate segments, fuels short-form highlights, and moves merchandise at a pace most rookies never approach. By the metrics that define modern attention, he is the draw. Yet, a segment of observers continues to undercut him, not because of shortcomings on tape, but because of discomfort with how prominent he already is. Cam Ward put words to what many could see. Coverage around Sanders has been filtered through reaction to his visibility, rather than a clear read of his performance and growth. The market has already weighed in. Demand is real, not manufactured. Nike's record-level rookie endorsement aligned with that reality, signaling long-term value and cultural reach. This exposes a core contradiction. The NFL depends on star power to sell tickets, fill stadiums, and boost ratings, but it resists stars who set terms on their own. Visibility is celebrated until a player exercises it. The fix is straightforward. Apply one standard. Evaluate Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and results, and treat his platform as the asset it is. If the league benefits from his presence, its evaluation practices should reflect that same reality, consistently and without penalty for scale. Shedeur Sanders does not depend on league promotion. He established his platform before the NFL and continues to expand it on his own terms. That autonomy challenges the status quo. Cam Ward's support was more than a defense of a teammate. It was a warning that if the league holds to outdated expectations, it risks falling behind the very players who drive audience attention and revenue. Claims that Sanders lacks real popularity ignore measurable facts. A large, active following, consistent merchandise demand, and sustained coverage across major outlets. Doubts about his standing as a quarterback overlook his college production and growth indicators. The pattern is familiar. Efforts to minimize him increase his reach. Each skeptical headline widens the spotlight, and each dismissive take creates more engagement. You cannot reduce a player built for visibility by arguing he should be less visible. The practical outcome is the opposite. Scrutiny becomes signal. Sanders is not merely enduring criticism, he is turning it into momentum, converting attention into leverage on and off the field. Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Brown's training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work, with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations: high red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Berry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a third down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear, side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation. While much of the NFL community attended the ESPYs in Los Angeles, Shedeur Sanders spent the day in Cleveland with families recovering from a residential explosion. He did not seek cameras or a red carpet appearance. He chose to be present in a neighborhood working through loss. Weeks earlier, an explosion at the Rainbow Terrace Apartments in the Garden Valley neighborhood displaced more than 100 residents. Local officials reported that 42 families were left without housing. A father suffered burns over most of his body and remained in a coma. His 2 young children were hospitalized in critical condition. The damage extended beyond structures. Families lost possessions, stability, and routine. Cleveland City Council member Richard A. Starr described the moment as a family fighting for its future. Outside of local reporting, national attention was limited. Sanders decided to go to the site, meet residents, and help organize a day focused on relief and connection. The decision drew questions almost immediately. Some asked why he was not at the ESPYs, others questioned his motives. Sanders did not respond with counter-arguments. He explained simply that he felt an obligation to be present and that he would act on that conviction. This was not a team-scheduled appearance. He promoted the gathering himself, arrived without ceremony, and spent the day with residents. His approach emphasized listening, participation, and time. The event, which he called the Garden Valley Fun Fest, brought a large turnout over several hours. The purpose was straightforward: create space for families to reconnect and for children to play, even as recovery work continued. Sanders threw passes with kids on the blacktop, joined in games, and spoke with parents and grandparents about what they were facing next. He moved through the apartment complex and common areas with minimal staff support. Browns defensive lineman Michael Hall Jr. attended and interacted with residents as well. There were no speeches or staged moments. The focus remained on residents and their needs. Questions about visibility persisted as photos and short clips circulated online. Some criticism framed the visit as a substitute for a higher profile appearance in Los Angeles. Sanders kept to the same message. The priority was to support a neighborhood coping with displacement and uncertainty. He did not present the choice as a protest of any event. He presented it as the correct use of his day. When local media asked about his intent, Sanders said his goal was to provide families with a day of enjoyment and a reminder of community. He added that financial support can help, but that showing up in person also matters. Standing with people, listening to them directly, and offering time. The statement matched the structure of the day. He stayed on site, remained accessible, and left the focus on residents rather than on himself. The timeline mattered to him as training camp approached. Sanders did not connect the visit to his role on the depth chart or his draft position. He kept references to football confined to preparation, learning the playbook, protections, cadence, and timing, seeking guidance from veterans, including Joe Flacco, and staying ready for opportunities when they come. He has repeated that he has time to grow and intends to use it to learn the system and earn trust. The visit did not alter those priorities. He returned to his regular schedule the next day. Since arriving in Cleveland, Sanders has treated community work as part of his responsibilities. Before his jersey went on sale, he visited schools, including John Marshall High School, speaking with students about goals, accountability, and effort. He set public objectives confidently, such as long-term aspirations for the franchise, but paired them with routine work in the building, meetings in stall, film, and on-field reps. The day at Rainbow Terrace fit that pattern. Identify a need, show up, contribute, and avoid unnecessary attention. For residents, the FunFest provided a brief reprieve from ongoing challenges: housing transitions, school logistics, medical appointments, and the paperwork that follows an emergency. For teammates and staff who observed, it was an example of a rookie investing time locally without seeking a headline. For Sanders, it reinforced how he plans to operate in Cleveland: be consistent, be present, and let actions speak. The setting at Rainbow Terrace underscored the scale of recovery ahead. Families described the first weeks after the explosion: nights in temporary housing, efforts to replace clothing and essentials, coordination with agencies and community groups. Sanders moved from group to group, speaking with parents about their immediate needs, greeting elders who came to watch the activities, and encouraging kids who wanted to throw a football, run races, or take a photo. He kept the schedule flexible so residents could arrive and leave as they were able. Community partners and volunteers handled tables for supplies, simple games, and refreshments. There were no sponsor banners or organizational pitches. Residents organized as they usually do, checking on neighbors, guiding children, and sharing updates. Sanders' role was clear: participate, make time, and listen. The presence of a recognizable player brought energy, but the purpose remained practical: create a normal afternoon in a place that had not felt normal since the blast. Online reaction covered the full range of opinion. Some posts praised the decision and the event's tone. Others questioned why a rookie would skip a high-visibility awards show. Sanders did not try to manage that conversation. He maintained the same explanation. He chose to spend the day where he believed he could be useful, and then he returned to his football schedule. The approach was consistent with how he addresses other topics: answer directly and move on to the next task. The same measured approach appears in his preparation for camp. Sanders has not asked for public guarantees about reps. He has focused on install recall, cadence, and protection IDs, route timing, and situational work. He has sought input from veterans, thanked teammates who have provided guidance, and spent time with receivers and linemen to align on communication. Coaches have emphasized that the quarterback competition is a process, and Sanders has accepted that framework. His emphasis remains on readiness. None of this overshadows the experience and resumes of other players on the roster. It does provide a clearer picture of how Sanders operates as a professional. He separates off-field actions from promotional efforts. He keeps football preparation focused on what he can control. He communicates with teammates across position groups so that timing and expectations are shared. He does not try to steer attention in his favor. He tries to make steady progress. The day in Garden Valley was one example. He arrived without a speech, stayed for hours, and left without an announcement. He did not ask for recognition. He offered time. Residents responded in kind. Kids lined up for catches and races. Parents and grandparents asked about camp and wished him well, and neighbors coordinated rides and schedules around the event. The atmosphere felt like a neighborhood gathering, not a media production. Local leaders who were present or who spoke later emphasized that recovery will take months. Families will continue to navigate housing, healthcare, and daily logistics. Events like the FunFest do not resolve those issues, but they help sustain community connections and morale. Sanders' contribution was to create a space for that to happen and to treat the day with the same seriousness he applies to practice, plan, execute, and keep the focus where it belongs. As the preseason approaches, Sanders will continue to compete for opportunities on the field. He has said he will be prepared when called upon, and that he understands the importance of mastering details before focusing focusing on outcomes. The organization will make decisions based on evaluation, and he will accept the results while continuing to improve. The off-field choices will remain consistent, identify needs in the city where he lives, and contribute in direct, practical ways. The core elements are simple. A neighborhood suffered a significant loss. Residents faced immediate and ongoing challenges. A rookie quarterback chose to spend a day there, without a press conference, without a schedule of talking points, and participate in a community-led event designed to give families a break and remind children that play still has a place. He provided presence, not a headline. He listened more than he spoke. He returned to work the next day. In a league and media environment that often prioritize visibility, Sanders made a different choice. He kept attention on people, not optics. He placed value on time spent in person rather than on appearances. He continued to build trust in the locker room and in the city through steady conduct rather than declarations. That approach, measured, direct, and consistent, will shape how he is viewed in Cleveland as much as any public statement could. The outcome of his football career will be decided on the field by installations learned, reads made, throws delivered, and games played. The outcome of his role in the community will be measured by smaller, quieter moments. Afternoons like the Fun Fest, school visits, and unannounced stops where listening matters more than being seen. For Cleveland residents at Rainbow Terrace, the takeaway from that day was straightforward. Someone who represents their team showed up, stayed, and participated without fanfare. For Sanders, it was the same. Do the work in front of you, whether that is a practice period or a neighborhood event, and keep the focus on the people who are affected most.
Rich Eisen addressed the armchair analysts and online critics head on. Shedeur Sanders just received his opportunity, and the backlash arrived immediately. Eisen responded with a clear, point-by-point case explaining why the criticism misses the mark. If you thought Shedeur's rise was rapid, Eisen's analysis puts it in proper context. Here's what he laid out on air.
Already speaking in Cleveland high schools.
Weekend after, flying out immediately to get to work.
But his character's terrible, right? You know, and listen, oh, he interviewed bad, you know. According to who? The New York Giants? No offense, Bert. The same New York Giants that gave Daniel Jones a huge contract and let Saquon Barkley out the door, that's the intel we're trusting here?
That was for him to celebrate. He just made, I mean, look, he put in work in college. He had the privilege of being coached by his father,
which we all would love and do.
Turned around not one, but two programs in college football. And then literally for any athlete, being drafted at the highest level is a success story in itself.
Rich Eisen delivered a direct response to the critics. He addressed the online claims reducing Shedeur Sanders to Deion Sanders' son instead of evaluating him as a quarterback on merit. Eisen challenged those assumptions and refocused the discussion on performance, preparation, and opportunity.
Say Kenny Pickett had strained his hamstring. Shedeur, they say his first day in pass, 9 for 9, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They were just hating on this young guy.
Within minutes, Rich Eisen delivered a structured breakdown, addressing each claim with evidence and dismantling weak narratives through clear analysis. He replaced speculation with data and kept the focus on what matters: decision-making, accuracy, leadership, preparation, and game management. The reality is simple. Shedeur Sanders was not given this opportunity. He earned it through performance and consistency against real competition. He accepted the role, met the standard, and handled the moment with professionalism and urgency. No shortcuts, no favors, just results and readiness. Eisen's point was direct. Evaluate Shedeur on his work, not assumptions, and acknowledge that he has justified the opportunity on the field.
I've done it at 2 locations already, so it's simple. So that's why when people say I'm not, you know, one of the top quarterbacks or the top quarterback, is what are y'all going based off of? Because I did it year after year after year, and you see the progression. So it's like, obviously it got to be some type of external hate that you have for the family, for the last name, for anything, because I know I proved myself.
While many were still debating whether he was NFL ready, Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the practice field and operated like a clear QB1, setting protections, controlling tempo, and executing the plan. The narrative that he is just flash, media attention, or his father's influence does not hold up against his work in installs, progressions, and situational drills. What he showed was composure, efficiency, and command of the offense. He processed quickly, protected the football, and delivered on-time throws, demonstrating preparation and control.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had the same exact skill set, we would be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'd be
here,
3
not
quarterbacks,
4.
not 4.
Yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders.
From the first day of camp, he was not there to get by. He arrived to lead. There was no hesitation in installs, no lapses in fundamentals, just precise timing, clean footwork, and consistent velocity to every level of the field. He managed protections, controlled cadence, and delivered in situational work, showing command rather than learning on the fly. The approach was efficient and disciplined, with attention to detail and progressions and ball placement that reflected preparation, not improvisation. At the same time, Rich Eisen addressed the narrative directly and backed it with evidence. He laid out clips, context, and performance markers to cut through speculation. Eisen emphasized that Shedeur Sanders did not step into this moment because of publicity. He built toward it through sustained work, resilience, and results. The background, media readiness, high football IQ, and a professional approach was developed over years, not days, and it translated to immediate operational control of the offense. The resistance came from familiar places. Some in the traditional guard still frame mobile quarterbacks as limited and expected the nepotism label to define him. That view did not hold up against what was on the field. Composure under pressure, secure decision-making, accurate throws into tight windows, and consistent execution in red zone and 2-minute sequences. Eisen's point was clear. Evaluate Shedeur Sanders on performance and readiness. The evidence shows he earned the opportunity and is meeting the standard with accountability and consistency.
Yeah, teams didn't draft him because they didn't think he was first-round talent. And the quote we played and that's on the screen, I think is flatly wrong. We all know this shouldn't have happened. Yes, it should have. It should have happened because this wasn't. Now, again, teams can be wrong. The league as a whole can be wrong. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens drafted a 25-year-old tight end before they drafted Lamar Jackson in the same draft. The die is not cast on who Shedeur Sanders.
He stated it plainly. This is not a celebrity appearance. This is a quarterback with pocket presence, leadership, and decision-making that stands on its own. You either show it or you settle into a backup role. Shedeur Sanders is not auditioning. He is establishing himself as the starter. When the opportunity arrived, whether through injury, trade, or depth chart changes, Shedeur was prepared and delivered. He did not hesitate. He executed the offense and finished drives. As others tried to catch up to what they were seeing, Rich Eisen reinforced the same message he has been repeating: evaluate the work. Camp reports have been consistently positive, but the important shift is how the performance is being received. Casual attendees who came to observe left talking about Shedeur's command and poise. Detailed observers focused on his pre-snap reads, protection checks, and audibles, highlighting the mechanics, timing, and ball placement that support efficient, controlled play.
He lied to us all when he said that this was going to be an open competition, a 4-man open competition when it comes to the QB situation up there in Cleveland, in which, from the looks of it, all we've seen it be was a 3-man race. The only people that has been getting reps in with the first team or with the veterans are Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. We've never seen my boy Shedeur Sanders get a chance to get in. Even with him doing the things that he has been doing up there, he has yet to get in with the...
Shedeur Sanders was caught off guard by Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent remarks, which have sparked talk of bringing in another starting quarterback. Commentators are debating whether Stefanski's comments reflect eroding confidence in Sanders or a brief lapse in judgment, but the rookie now faces intensified scrutiny over his role.
The Browns, we got an analyst that says that Shedeur Sanders should have some kind of a ban? Banishment of some kind? Come again? Say what? For what? And we've got, this would be more troubling. If I'm a Browns fan, and this is where we're going to start, potential dissension in the ranks of the front office and the coach. And over what? Quarterback.
When a program's headline quarterback suddenly becomes the subject of sideline murmurs and quiet searches for replacements, the situation is unmistakable. It's a breach of trust. Shedeur Sanders, the passer who put Colorado back in national conversations with his production and profile, has just received a clear message that his job security is in question. Coach Kevin, the assistant previously considered to be in Sanders' corner, made remarks that ignited speculation about changing quarterbacks. Fans, analysts, and even Deion Sanders are now reassessing the team's unity and its true plan for the position. The comment was no accident. It was a deliberate signal that the staff may soon elevate a backup. For perspective, Shedeur Sanders did not step into ideal conditions last season. He was sacked so often that Colorado could have dedicated a locker to every opposing edge rusher who reached him.
Could I possibly go to bat for Kevin Stefanski as a great head coach? No, I couldn't. Could you go at bat against him, saying he's a horrible head coach?
No, I can't. I think that's why we fall in the middle. I think that's why in a lot of these discussions, and that's why a lot of the rankings, you see him right now in that 15 to 20 range, somewhere in that middle pack of NFL head coaches.
I've said earlier, Kevin Stefanski has already been given more head coaches than any coach I've ever seen in Cleveland. Starting with the decision to move on from Baker and him clearly still having another level to get to in Tampa.
Last season, Shedeur Sanders often had to operate behind an offensive line that provided minimal protection, yet he still delivered precise throws and critical drives. At times, he seemed to be carrying a struggling roster almost on his own. Despite the constant pressure, he never complained, never threatened to transfer, and never acted entitled. He remained with Colorado because he trusted the program, trusted his father, and believed in the team's larger mission. That loyalty is why Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent statement that the quarterback competition is wide open struck so sharply. The remark implies that Sanders' starting role is insecure, as though the player who absorbed countless hits while holding the offense together is simply another name competing with walk-ons and first-year athletes who are still learning the cadence. This goes beyond ordinary coach language about fostering competition. It introduces genuine uncertainty about the staff's confidence in Sanders and invites speculation that Colorado is actively assessing outside options through the transfer portal. By characterizing the position as vacant, Stefanski has planted seeds of doubt that could quickly evolve into rumors and undermine the stability of the locker room.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to quarterback, I'm gonna defer to my head coach, generally speaking, especially one with Stefanski's track record and how he's viewed across the league. So this is interesting because it tells you Kevin Stefanski's not a Shedeur Sanders guy. And it also tells us who made these picks. Exactly. The Cleveland Browns made a rather awkward decision in the NFL draft, opting to take quarterback Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, well before he was expected to fly off the board. Then 2 rounds later, the Browns took fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly is going on?
Discussion has begun about whether Colorado is actively evaluating another quarterback and preparing for life after Shedeur Sanders. Analysts are debating whether Coach Kevin's move is calculated strategy or a misstep that jeopardizes team stability. Sanders remains a top NFL prospect, Deion Sanders' son, and the program's public face. His highlights dominate social media and his jerseys outsell the team's victories. Yet he is once again being asked to reaffirm his position. The issue is more than routine roster management. It intersects with the family dynamics that shape the program. By portraying the quarterback job as open, Coach Kevin signals to both Shedeur and Deion that the staff is willing to move on despite Sanders' stature. For Shedeur, sitting through film sessions while hearing talk of potential replacements adds an unwelcome layer of uncertainty to an otherwise proven resume. The decision may reflect a desire for a quarterback with a different profile, perhaps someone more mobile and system-oriented, rather than a dismissal of Sanders' accomplishments.